so that the sales for just LCDs themselves is big enough to move the needle so that they actually report that, you know, to the street. So they're always very interested in finding out more intelligence on whether or not they're going to hit numbers, and if not, why not. So in one quarter, the team tasked with putting out this forecast for TVs said, you know, this is going to be a great quarter, we're going to sell a lot, we're going to meet these numbers, and yet at the same time, and they had their market running at this point, the same people, same crowd, bet against, essentially shorted the forecast in the prediction market. So they were saying and telling management one thing, but believing something entirely different. And that is really the crux of what a prediction market is designed to do. So as far as that's just a bit about us. We've been at this for since about 93, 94. We actually, the concept got started by a guy by the name of Robin Hanson, an economics professor, who really realized that you could take the tools of economics and then apply them to, you know, problem domains within business. So how do I get a better forecast? How, if I'm going to make a decision, do I get more information to make that decision? There's been a lot of folks across several different industries that have used this. I'll talk a bit more about Best Buy and GE. You know, about a third of our businesses within the government, especially defense and intelligence, is using this as an intelligence gathering tool to try to allocate resources for assets or get more insight into what people are thinking and believing but not maybe saying, because it's a very top-down organization, and when you have a system like this, it flattens it out and gives people an incentive, again, to share their information. So one company that we work with here in New York, just as an example of that, it's a software company that services the financial services industry. And they've been running markets for several years now, and consistently, some of their better participants are actually more lower level executive admins, you know, folks that really aren't in the decision-making chain. I can think of one in particular. She's an admin for 3 VPs, sits in meetings, taking notes, is on calls, sort of highly organized, and she's one of the better, more strategic players in their prediction market because she understands who is meeting whom and how things are fitting together, whether or not something's on time or you know, what kind of risks it has, because she can sort of see this at this meta level, and yet she's not in the chain of, hey, you know, we're about to make this huge decision, you know, what do you think? And so that's, you know, again, another example of what these things are really able to do by pulling out that information if you've got the right incentives out there. So a market, again, that's Robin. There's been a couple things that have really helped spur on the development. One is Robin. He's been really the founder of the field. We started working with him a few years after he produced a lot of research and papers. Jim Surowiecki's book, The Wisdom of Crowds, came out in 2004. That's been a very influential book as far as talking about things related to crowdsourcing and using prediction markets specifically. Electronic Markets has been accurately forecasting the election results since the late 80s. So if you want to know who's going to, you know, take control of Congress or who's going to get the White House, you go to the Iowa Electronic Market, which is a prediction market, and it's been very, very accurate. I mean, if you contrast that against, you know, polls in some instances, I mean, it really beats it overwhelmingly, but in some instances by such a margin that's like an order of magnitude. I mean, it's just spooky how accurate it is. And then DARPA, around the time that Surowiecki's book came out, there was a DARPA project that intended to use prediction markets, and it unfortunately failed very publicly. It was a sort of this spectacular failure that was really misunderstood by the folks on the Hill, so they killed it. And then, you know, about 2 months later, everyone realized how effective it was going to be, and so it sort of got into that area of the budget that people don't talk about. So, so a market practically the way it works is if you're at your company, you give everyone some sort of pot of money or some sort of internal currency that says you now have $100,000 to trade with. And so why do you care that you now have all this play money? You're going to tie that to some sort of incentive, either a tangible thing or other intangible things. Examples of tangible things would be gift cards or bonuses or perks of the company like vacation pay or other things that you can do by demonstrating and increasing your net worth. Because everyone would say start at $100,000 or $1 million, and then as you trade and make decisions, you're going to hopefully increase your net worth. And by increasing your net worth, you're going to be seen as someone who knows what's going on. They got their finger on the pulse of this project, and that's going to spur you on to continue to do well. Other intangible incentives are things like reputation. If you've got a market that everyone in the company is involved in, and you are in the top 3%, then that's a very big thing for your reputation as you enhance, as you move up through the organization. As well as the third thing would be influence. So you can take, after running a prediction market, and Best Buy has run one for 3 going on 4 years, they've got people who are consistently right. If you look at confidence bands, you can say, hey, we can put these people in the 90% and above category for being correct. Then you can give them more responsibility, more influence. They've done things where the CEO and various folks on the video will tap into them that says, hey, we're thinking about changing the logo or changing the branding. They just went through a branding set of decisions several months ago and included folks in the prediction market that have demonstrated skill there consistently. And again, that's coming from outside the sort of circle that a decision maker would typically have. They've looked to this to really crowdsource those decisions. And so there's a couple of things that contrast prediction markets with other methods that are important, and that is users self-select. So you might be a finance person and you might be a technology person, and we've got marketing people and all of these other types of people. You're going to put these questions out there, and in a survey, if you got a survey of these questions, you would just have to fill out the survey, and maybe 30 questions of the 50, and then those last 20 you're like, well, I'm not really sure, but I've got to fill this survey out to do my job or whatever. And so you're just going to check the boxes or maybe give it some thought, but not really invest a lot into it. Well, with a prediction market, since you're incentivized to do well, you're only going to go towards the questions that you know something about. So if I'm a tech guy, I'm going to answer the tech questions, the ones I have some intelligence on. Or if I'm a tech guy and I know something about this finance question because my buddy works in finance and he told me that we just had a really good deal happen, then I can take advantage of that and make some money in the prediction market. So we find that the best cases of prediction market